Okay, I hesitated on making this video because I was warned, to be quite honest, that if I do make this video, I'm going to piss off a lot of people and I'm going to offend a lot of people. And I took that into consideration until I realized I actually don't give a shit. To be quite honest, I really don't give a shit. Okay? So let's talk about the Morbius movie and why I love it. Here's the thing. I don't actually love the Morbius movie itself. Okay? That's not why I love the Morbius movie. Because the Morbius movie is, a typical comic book movie. It's the equivalent of like 70% of every other comic book movie out there, right? Typical standard superhero or anti-hero in this movie's case, right? Standard typical supervillain, right? Throw in, plot holes, plot conveniences, Deus Ex Machinas, four-story plot, sprinkled, sprinkled with a handful of bullshit stupid, baked for an hour and a half, and voila, comic book movie, right? Same bullshit, stupid, plot hole, plot convenience movie like 70% of all the other movies out there, right? And I figured, okay, I'd wait till, I get a general reaction to the movie before, I make a video tearing it apart. But something interesting happened instead. You all hated this movie. You're all calling out all the bullshit stupid. You're all calling out the issues and problems you have with this movie. You're all calling out the plot holes and plot conveniences. And I was actually confused because, like I said, this is a typical comic book movie, like 70% of all the comic book movies that are out there. You guys should love this movie. You guys should like this movie. But you didn't. And here's the dirty little secret about the Morbius movie that you guys failed to somehow notice. All the issues and problems and bullshit stupid and plot holes and plot conveniences and Deus Ex Machinas that are in Morbius were in the No Way Home movie. The same problems and issues and bullshit stupid and plot holes and plot conveniences and Deus Ex Machinas that you somehow, for some reason, had a problem in the Morbius movie was also in the Batman movie. Was also in, the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, Thor Ragnarok, Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, the Venom movies. In basically 70% of all the comic book movies that have been out in the last, 10 plus years, the same problems that you somehow had in the Morbius movie were in all those other movies. And when I point out and when I make videos pointing out all the problems, or when I discuss it with all of you comic book geek culture fanboys, you guys will bend backwards trying to figure out how to defend all the bullshit stupid, all the plot holes, plot conveniences in those movies. But for some reason, you didn't do that with Morbius. And I'm going, well, how can that be? And then I went, oh, that's easy. It's because you're all bullshit artists. All you comic book geek culture, all you comic book movie geek culture fanboys are bullshit artists. Your critiques, analysis, opinions, and viewpoints on comic book movies are bullshit. Your defense of these comic book movies are based on bullshit. Because there's no way you saw No Way Home and you didn't notice the plot holes, plot conveniences, bullshit, stupid Deus Ex Machinas in No Way Home, but you somehow noticed them in Morbius. Go fuck yourselves. Go fuck yourselves. Either you didn't notice or you just didn't care. You didn't care about the problems in No Way Home. And again, how? Why didn't you care about the problems in No Way Home, but you somehow cared when it was in Morbius? Jeezy, you're full of shit. Your critique and how you decide what you do and do not like about a movie, when you decide when bullshit, stupid plot holes and plot conveniences actually apply, is based on what? Nothing. It's based on whether or not you actually want to. Did you like the movie? Did you like No Way Home? Yeah. Well, then guess what? You're gonna ignore. You're gonna ignore all the stupid. You're gonna ignore all the bullshit, stupid. You're gonna ignore all the plot holes. You're gonna ignore all the plot conveniences. You're gonna ignore all the Deus Ex Machinas. You're gonna ignore all the issues. And why? Because you just decided to. It's because you chose to. You simply chose to ignore all the bullshit, stupid, in No Way Home or, the Batman movie, and you chose not to ignore it in the Morbius movie. That's the foundation of your critique and your problem with the Morbius movie, as opposed to, the Spider-Man movie or the Batman movie. That's it. That's all you got, boys and girls. I hate to break it to you. And here's the thing, okay, about the Morbius movie, okay? Any issue, any problem that you have with the Morbius movie, I can actually give an example, okay, in another comic book movie that you all love, that you all like, okay? And I can point it out, and guess what? You defended that shit. You defended that bullshit. This is why I'm using the Spider-Man No Way Home movie as an example. But I can use any comic book movie. Okay? I can use any comic book movie. Any comic book movie that had the same issue that you pretend that you somehow have with the Morbius movie, I can go, yeah, but this X comic book movie had the same issue, and you guys tried to defend it. You guys tried to justify it. You guys ignored it in that movie. Why aren't you doing it Morbius movie? See, that's the problem. Like if Morbius had come out, in the beginning, then yeah, obviously I couldn't do any. You could justify it. You could get away with it. But this is like, this is after like 10 plus years of comic book movies. So any issue that you pretend that you have with the Morbius movie, I can point out the same issue in another comic book movie that you all pretended to say that you like, and you didn't have an issue when that movie did it. Hence, another way of establishing that your bullshit weak attempt at justifying why you didn't like the Morbius movie is based on bullshit. Because the same problem that you had with Morbius, you didn't have it when another movie did the exact same thing. Okay? Do you understand how your critique and your viewpoints and your dislike for the Morbius movie and the issues you have with the Morbius movie are based on nothing more than bullshit? Because you can't say, I didn't like it when Morbius did this type of issue, but you didn't have a problem when another comic book movie did the exact same thing. I know you guys are hypocritical bullshit artists, and you don't realize how that calls you out as being hypocritical bullshit artists. And I actually have to explain to you how that calls you out as hypocritical bullshit artists. But again, I'm here for you. I do this for you because somebody needs to explain to you that you're hypocritical bullshit artists, and because you don't even realize it. Your justification on why you hated the movie is bullshit. It's bullshit. Because the same thing that you're using to justify hating Morbius, when I bring it up in No Way Home or the Batman, those issues don't exist. Those issues don't exist. Why don't they exist? You should hate and call out No Way Home for the same bullshit, stupid, same plot holes, plot conveniences, Deus Ex Machinas that was in Morbius. But you don't. So telling me that your defense of a movie is because it doesn't have those problems, you're full of shit. You're all full of shit. I mean, I've been establishing that the comic book movie Geek Culture Fanbase has been full of shit since, the Avengers movie. But, and this is why I love the Morbius movie, because unfortunately it was a sacrificial lamb to have you morons expose how full of shit you are. Okay? Don't get mad at me. Okay? This is your fault. Okay? You were the one stupid because the Geek Culture comic book movie fan base and the general audience itself, because you're all hypocritical bullshit artists, and you're so used to and you're so used to talking to everybody else who's also so full of are all hypocritical bullshit artists, you actually figured you could call out the Morbius movie and nobody would call it out or nobody would notice. Guess what, morons? I noticed. Okay? And if you're offended, okay, tough. Okay? The only reason you're offended is because I'm calling you out on your bullshit. The only reason you would be pissed is because I'm calling you out on your bullshit. You're only pissed because I'm calling you out on your bullshit. And here's the best part. For those of you who are offended and for those of you who are pissed, okay? And you can't just wait to just trash me in the comments. I just want you to know, the only reason you would be offended for being called a bullshit artist is if you actually are the bullshit artist I'm calling out. So in the comments, for those of you who are so pissed and ready to trash me and get mad for being called a bullshit artist, just realize if you do, you're revealing that you're the bullshit artists I'm talking about. So in the comments, explain how offended you are, okay, for being called out as a bullshit artist because you're the bullshit artist I'm calling out, okay? So not only that, I don't care, because if you think your opinion or critique or viewpoint on what I had to say has any value, you're out of your goddamn mind. Your opinions have no value. It has no relevance to me. Okay? You're bullshit artists. Why would I take your bullshit opinion seriously or give it any value? I mean, like, this is the weird thing about actually making this video, because to me it's a win-win situation. The only probable downside is that I'm probably going to lose subscribers. Well, guess what? The only subscribers I'd be losing are the bullshit artists who are offended for being called out on a bullshit artist. So guess what, morons? If you actually are pissed off and offended at this and you unsubscribe, guess what? You're one of the bullshit artists I'm calling out. I mean, here's another thing. There's actually a scene in the Morbius movie that I legitimately really liked. And that was when Morbius is with the girl in the cafe, and Morbius sees the two guys handing the counterfeit money to the cashier. And Morbius follows the guys out. And follows them to their lab or whatever, right? And he kicks them out. And the movie has now established how Morbius now has a lab to be able to continue on, right? Unlike in No Way Home, where the Spider-Man need a lab, and so in the next scene, they just have a lab. They just got some college or university lab. No explanation, no explanation, no justification, no showing how they got it. And you guys didn't give a shit. And not only that, they had a lab. At least with the Morbius movie, it showed that the new lab actually had the equipment that he would have needed, and how he kind of adjusted the equipment to be able to provide the the things he needed. In No Way Home, okay, they didn't have anything, that lab that they just suddenly got, that they just somehow, walked up the stairs, walked in and just walked into the lab, right? That lab has nowhere near the equipment or resources to be able to provide the cures that they need, because what they would need would be the high-tech experimental high R&D equipment from the Oscorp company, right? Those incredibly specialized, over-the-top, high-end special, equipment. No, you could. They're in a college lab, and you know what? You bullshit artists didn't give a shit. You didn't give a shit. Don't tell me with any level of validity that you didn't have a problem with that, but you had a problem with the Morbius movie, because guaranteed, if in the Morbius movie, okay, you had that scene in the cafe, because here's the other thing. Here's the defense. Here's the defense for why they didn't have to show the lab. Well, they just needed a lab, so it was okay. Well, does the movie have to explain everything? Well, if it's actually written by competent writers, yes, it can be. Unfortunately, since No Way Home, I know this is a rant on No Way Home, but I'm just using it as an example. It's not my fault No Way Home is so full of shit. Like, now I lost my train of thought. Like, again, if Morbius, okay, simply had that Morbius was talking to the girl and says, I need a new lab. And then the next scene, Morbius was just in the new lab. Would you guys have actually not have had a problem with it? No. But again, guaranteed, if in the Morbius movie, Morbius just, in the next scene, just had a lab, you would have gone, oh my God, what? Like, why don't they have a lab? Like, can't they explain how you don't just pull a lab out of your ass? Well, no, unless of course your character's name is Spider-Man. Okay? And here's the other reason I want to bring that up, because here's the thing about the Morbius movie. You want to know what the biggest sin that the Morbius movie committed? It didn't have the words Marvel Studios in the beginning, because if the Morbius movie was produced and released by Disney and Marvel, guess what? All of your problems with the movie, all of your issues with the movie, all of your, all the bullshit, stupid, the plot holes and plot convenience would have magically disappeared. Okay? And I don't mean that Marvel did their version of Morbius. I mean, take that actual Morbius movie, exactly the way that it was, and just have produced by Marvel Studio Productions in the beginning of it. And you would have forgiven it all like you did every other MCU movie, because you're all MCU fanboys. You are all bullshit MCU fanboys that literally forgive Marvel for whatever the hell it is, because it's Marvel. You see, if Sony does it, it's bad. It's wrong. But if Marvel does it, if the MCU does it, well, that's just a typical MCU movie. You can have a bullshit-ridden, plot-hole-ridden movie, but as long as it's done by the MCU, you want to know what your excuse for it is? Well, that's how MCU movies are. So MCU movies are allowed to be full of shit. MCU movies are allowed to be full of plot holes. MCU movies are allowed to be full of deus ex machinas and plot conveniences. That's how full of shit your critiques of comic book movies are. That's how full of shit your opinions and viewpoints on comic book movies are. And here's another thing, okay? If Morbius, okay, was released by Marvel and Disney, okay, that movie would have made anywhere between $300 to $500 million, if not more. You know how I can make that claim? Because guess what? Thor, The Dark World, which so many of you said sucked and wasn't very good, made over $600 million. Okay, Ant-Man, which so many of you said wasn't a very good movie, made over $500 million. Ant-Man and the Wasp, which so many of you said wasn't a very good movie, made over $600 million. Shang-Chi, which is pretty much has the exact same issues and problems that the Morbius movie did. What did Shang-Chi make? Over $400 million. The Eternals, which so many of you said was one of the worst movies, along with Thor: The Dark World. How much did The Eternals make? Over $400 million. Okay? Sure, those movies sucked, but that's okay. It had the MCU logo in front of it, so it's okay that they sucked. It's allowed to suck. We're supposed to like it because it has the MCU logo on it. That's the thing about you geek culture, comic book, movie, fan base, MCU fanboys, general audience, bullshit artists that you all are. As long as it has, yeah, sure. The Morbius movie, as is, may have sucked, may have been a piece of shit movie, but if it was in the MCU and it had the Marvel Production Studio logo in front of it, guess what? Guess what? You would have forgiven it of all its bullshit stupid, and you would have let it ride just like you did Thor: The Dark World, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Shang-Chi, The Eternals. Okay? Sorry. That's how I can establish that a movie like Morbius, as bad as it is, okay, as long as it had the MCU logo on it, all of you geek culture, comic book movie, MCU fanboys, general audience would have gone, that's okay. It's still going to make between $300 to $500 million because the movies, the MCU movies you all say are some of the worst MCU movies, made what? Between $400 to $600 million each. Please, give me a break. Hence, once again establishing how you comic book movie geek culture fanboys are bullshit artists. You're all full of shit. And, somebody has to call you out on it, and it might as well be me because I'm here for you. I do this for you. It's just the kind of guy I am. So yeah, like I said, I didn't actually love the Morbius movie for the movie that it was because, again, it was a typical standard comic book movie. I loved the Morbius movie because it was the sacrificial lamb to expose how all of you comic book movie geek culture fanboys are bullshit artists. So thank you, thank you, Morbius movie, and congratulations, morons. So yeah, I really don't care if you're offended. It's not my fault that you're bullshit artists. I don't care that you're pissed off. It's not my fault you're bullshit artists. So anything else? Nah, that's pretty much it. I think I said my piece. Anyway, well, can't wait for all the anger and backlash that I don't really give a shit about. Anyway, I'm out of here. See ya.